Hi everybody, it's Rudy again. This time to run through Bacharach Insight Plus, a feature-rich combustion analyzer that's very easy to operate and maintain. Before we get into that though, I did want to tell you a little bit of history about Bacharach. Herman Bacharach came to Pittsburgh in 1909. He was importing test instruments from Germany for the steel mills in Pittsburgh and also airflow instruments for the region's mining industry. Then in the summer of 1914, World War I broke out and he couldn't import instruments from Germany anymore. So he hired a machinist and a glass blower and they started making them themselves. The other interesting part of Bacharach's history came during World War II. Every Navy ship had multiple of these glass combustion test instruments on board to make sure that they maximized the efficient operation of the ship's boilers. The problem was these instruments were made out of hand-blown glass and kept getting broken during battle and high seas. So the Navy started a research project and they came up with this stuff called plastic. This led to the development of the first version of Bacharach's wet kit that everybody's familiar with. And the neat thing is that it was actually the very first use of industrial plastics, and it's actually in the Smithsonian Institute today. So with advances in technology, however, Bacharach still is a leader in the field and has come up with a new line of instrumentation, a good example of which is the Insight Plus, the one we're going to run through today.
So we'll get started here. This is the Insight Plus. First thing we'll do is plug in the hose and probe assembly. If you look at the end of the probe, you'll see a small metal rod sticking out of the end. That is the thermocouple that measures stack temperature. The other end of the hose assembly has a K-type thermocouple plug. That's going to go into the bottom of the instrument. Like I mentioned before, it is a K-type thermocouple. If you look at the two blades on a K-type thermocouple, they're different widths. The wider blade goes in on the right-hand side. Just to make it easier to plug it in, I put an X on the on the top of the thermocouple. That corresponds with the left-hand port. You also notice on the thermocouple ports in there, I put a little Sharpie mark across the one on the left-hand side that makes you just to make sure that I plug it into the right thermocouple port. So we'll go ahead and plug that in. Okay, then the other, the hose now, we want to plug in the, you'll notice that the one on the right-hand side is a larger diameter. That's what pulls flue gases in. The other two ports on the bottom are just the positive and negative side of a digital manometer. That's the only difference it makes. If I go into the middle port, that'll just make sure that the polarity is right. Okay. Make sure that the instrument is not pulling flue gases when we turn it on, as it is allowing the sensors to stabilize at this point. So we'll go ahead and hold the button down for a second or two. First thing you'll notice in the display is the version number. It's 1.30 if it went by too quick. If your firmware is a previous version, I think 1.17 was the previous version. If that's what you see in the display, you can go to Bacharach's website and download the latest version, no charge. Being able to keep your instrument's firmware up to date is one of the unique features of Bacharach's latest generation of combustion test instruments. Another thing to keep in mind is that all carbon monoxide sensors are cross-sensitive to NOx. One difference between the Intech and the Insight Plus is the CO sensor in the Intech is not NOx filtered. As a result, you'll get more accurate readings with a filtered sensor in the Insight. Bacharach does have an external filter available for the Intech. That's it right here. There's more information on that in the Intech video on our page. Another consideration is how the CO sensor powers up. You may have noted that this instrument displayed CO manual 0 in the screen during the warm-up period. This means that at the end of the warm-up period, the sensor will display the level of CO in the space that you are in. A safety concern. All other manufacturers do what's called a CO auto zero, and that's how Bacharach ships their instruments. If you haven't changed it, yours is probably still set up to do an auto zero. An auto zero means that the instrument assumes the air sampled during the warm-up is clean, and it will display 0 ppm when it's finished, even if there's somewhere between 1 and 49 ppm in the air where you're at. Remember, if there's more than 50 ppm in the space, the instrument will come up with a CO sensor error message in the display when it finishes that 60-second countdown. And if you press the run button, it will display several asterisks before the ppm reading instead of a number. If this ever happens, you need to immediately evacuate to clean air, turn the instrument off, then on again. If it powers up without the error message, go back in the space and see what's going on. If it comes up with repeated sensor error messages in clean air, it could suggest the CO sensor's reached the end of its useful service life, but frankly that's unlikely. Bacharach uses very good quality, long life sensors. The CO sensor is electrochemical in nature. That means the more CO that it's exposed to, the shorter the sensor's life will be. They should last many, many years, although like all manufacturers' carbon monoxide sensors, they do need to be calibrated every year. More on sensor calibration later. So we're going to go up to the instrument's menu. The menu button is the F2 button. Just to save some time, I'm only going to address the settings that may need some additional further explanation. Do please read Bacharach's installation operation manual to make sure that you are using the instrument properly. So we're going to hit the F2 button at the top of the keypad. To ensure that the calculated readings are correct, the first thing we want to do is enter the proper fuel type. So we'll hit the enter green button. It'll come up and say, natural gas, oil number 2, 4, 6, propane, whatever. Let's say it's a natural gas installation we're on. We're going to select natural gas. Eventually, we'll have a video on on how to interpret the test results and the meaning of what calculated readings, what that term means, calculated. So we're back to the display screen. You'll notice at the top it says natural gas. That's the fuel we've selected. That's really important for those calculated readings. Then we'll go back to the menu button. We'll hit pressure. We'll go to the pressure reading. I can scroll right or left to do the different types of pressure readings. You can do differential pressure, draft, or just simply a pressure reading, whatever. One thing to keep in mind is particularly when measuring draft, you're measuring hundredths of a water column inch, so it's important to zero out the manometer frequently. To zero out the manometer, press the F2 button or the 0 button, and you can either disconnect the smaller pressure hose at the bottom of the instrument or simply remove the probe from the stack. Press enter. Give it a moment for the reading to come back up. Make sure that it's reading 0. Then place the probe in the proper location for measuring draft. Okay, to get back to the main menu, we'll hit escape. Temperature, again, same kind of thing. You can do differential temperature, you can do temperature across the heat exchanger, whatever. And what you'll also need to do to get those readings is to go in and get an auxiliary thermocouple, any K-type thermocouple. That's a standard of the industry. Any K-type thermocouple will fit in there. You can use that as one of them, and you can use the probe as the other, or if you have two just generic K-type thermocouples, that will give you that temperature rise or temperature drop, whatever piece of information you're looking for. Okay, then to get back to the menu, we'll hit enter. We'll go down to Tune Right. This is another unique feature to the Insight Plus. It's called the Tune Right. What it does is gives you some guidance on what range of readings are generally considered acceptable. Always check with the manufacturer to verify what the readings on their particular equipment should be. A lot of times, more and more, we're seeing that in the manual. If it's not in the manual, contact the manufacturer. They should be able to offer you that information, no problem. So we're going to scroll down. We're going to select Tune Right. We're going to hit I accept on the disclaimer. Then you will choose which type of appliance you're testing. Say it's a 90% furnace. Hit enter. Then the Tune Right, once you start doing testing, the Tune Right feature will graph out the test results. If any of the parameters are out of what would normally be considered acceptable, a list of suggested troubleshooting items to check would be displayed. To get a more thorough understanding of the Tune Right function, go to Bacharach's website and view the video there. In fact, there are several videos that are very helpful on Bacharach's website. Go to the Insight Plus section, click on Learn More. In addition to the information on the Tune Right program, there are also very helpful videos on replacing sensors yourself, diagnosing flow problems, A lot of information at that nature. There's some stuff on the smartphone reporting app, which if you're not familiar with, it's something that you definitely want to check out. To exit TuneRite, hit the F2 button, go down to exit TuneRite, yes we're sure, hit enter, and we're back to the main screen. We'll go down to the memory section. When you select memory, you will see all sorts of different test results. They're all time and date stamped. I'll tell you what, we might want to just wait until I talk about the Bacharach smartphone reporting app, because that's where you might particularly use the test results from the memory. So we'll hit escape. Now we'll scroll down to setup, hit enter. This is where you enter in the temperature, centigrade, Fahrenheit, pressure, pascals, water column inches, whatever. The O2 reference, just leave that at 0. So the instrument calculates the CO air free reading, or another way to put it is the CO reference to a 0% oxygen. If you're not familiar with those terms, we have an explanation on our website at hbbpro.com, and we're hoping to put another video together soon on the difference between the CO air free or the CO reference to a 0% oxygen readings, or just the diluted carbon monoxide reading. Okay, so we're going to go down one more, hit print pressure. Print pressure determines whether the pressure reading is included on the thermal paper printout. Generally, I would select no, as combustion readings are rarely taken in the same place as the draft readings. Just depends on the equipment being tested. Zoom customizes the font size in the display. You can scroll down for the additional readings that wouldn't be included in the initial display. Standard displays 5 parameters, 2x displays 4, 3x displays 3 lines of text. Again, you can scroll down for the remaining lines. Test ID and username allows you to customize the thermal paper printout. But if you're using Bacharach smartphone reporting app, you won't need to do this. The smartphone reporting app allows you to do so much more than the thermal printer, and without getting the printer, it reduces the cost of ownership as well. The run-hold format allows you to customize the display. We'll select that. You hit Edit Format. When you press the Enter button, you'll see it highlights the line that you want to, or the number that you want to change, the parameter you want to change, and then we can scroll up or down to select whatever parameter you want. We'll talk more about that later, but consider including the stack temperature, the diluted carbon monoxide reading, the carbon monoxide reference to a 0% oxygen or the CO air free reading, the oxygen reading, that's pretty important, the carbon dioxide reading, and the steady state efficiency reading. Now, again, we'll talk about how to interpret the test results. I generally recommend just not paying any attention to steady state efficiency. It's kind of like a miles per gallon rating on an automobile, but a facilities manager or a homeowner is probably going to want to see steady state efficiency. So we'll back out of there. We will scroll down to language selection. That's pretty self-explanatory. Button sound, I'm not a big fan of the beeping going on, so I've got it silenced. You can either activate the button sound or not. Cal reminder period gives you a reminder in the display after the 60-second warm-up that the CO sensor needs to be calibrated, and again, I recommend generally once a year. Inactivity timeout, that shuts down the instrument if no buttons are pressed during a certain period of time. I'd suggest selecting 20 minutes. Post-purge period, it's a good idea to purge out any remaining flue gases and condensate out of the instrument before shutting it down. I would suggest at least a 1-minute post-purge, and or just get in the habit of disconnecting the hose and probe assembly and letting it run for a minute or two before shutting down. Also watch the moisture trap in the hose and probe assembly. Make sure that that's not collecting an excessive amount of moisture. If it is, it's really easy to open it up and empty it out. The CO0 setting, as mentioned previously, This is a unique feature that Bacharach has put into their instruments, and it's sort of a personal protection device. It helps you, it prevents you from being exposed to too much carbon monoxide without some knowledge that something's going on. Again, Bacharach's the only manufacturer with this feature, so a bit of an explanation is in order. All other manufacturers do only an auto CO0, and that's how Bacharach ships their instruments. Again, an auto CO0 means that the carbon monoxide sensor assumes the carbon monoxide level is 0 when you first turn the instrument on. For example, if we were in an area where there was 25 ppm, and I turned the instrument on and it's set up for an automatic 0, it's going to come up and read 0. This starts you out with a false 0, and more importantly, you'll be unaware that you're breathing a toxic gas. If the instrument is set up for a manual 0, on the other hand, the CO levels will be accurately displayed after the warm-up period. As mentioned previously, if the instrument is set up for an auto 0 and there's more than 50 ppm in the space, the instrument will display a CO error message, and there will be several asterisks in the several asterisks with before ppm in the display. Again, if this ever happens, you need to go to clean air, turn the instrument off, then on, and see what the display reads. If it reads 0, go back into the space and watch that carbon monoxide reading. If it's set up for a manual 0, there will be no error message. Instead, the run screen will display the CO level that it's detecting. So make sure that when you turn the instrument on, when it comes up to that run hold screen, make sure that you take a glance at that carbon monoxide level. Again, that's why I think it's a good idea to have that in the display. To set for a manual 0, you'll hit enter. Okay, you'll see manual 0, that's what I've got this one set up for. So let's say you turned it on and it said auto 0. What I would do is select manual 0, hit the green enter button, and then it says place instrument in fresh air, so you'd want to go outside, hit the button again. The display will read setting manual 0. The pump will run for 60 seconds and the manual 0 will be stored. I've had a lot of experience with that manual 0 reading. It's very accurate. So we'll back out of that. And we'll scroll down to the next section is O2 sensor type. The Insight Plus used to be available with a 2-year or a 3-year oxygen sensor. The 2-year sensor is part number 24-0788, and the same sensor, it's actually the same sensor as is in the Intech. The 3-year sensor is part number 24-1591. Protect CO, the default is 500 ppm. What that does is it shuts the pump off if the CO readings it reaches 500 ppm. This is to protect the CO sensor from damaging levels of carbon monoxide. I might set it a little higher. It's not unusual to get a bump over 500 ppm, particularly on a cold light off, but do keep in mind the more CO the sensor is exposed to, the shorter its life will be. We'll press escape, and then we'll scroll down past the setup button to calibration. Bacharach has come up with 4 options for calibrating, particularly the CO sensors. You can always send the instrument back into Bacharach for service. The second way is to sign up for a B-Smart sensor program. Basically, you'll receive a calibrated carbon monoxide sensor in the mail. You go to the calibration menu, select B-Smart, enter in the code. There'll be a 10-digit numerical code on the side of the sensor. You enter that into the B-Smart screen and return the original sensor to Bacharach in the included addressed stamped envelope. There are several private calibration centers around the country as well. If you do an internet search for Bacharach calibration and verification services, you might be able to locate one in your area. The fourth option is to purchase a regulator and calibration gas and just do it yourself in-house. Instructions for the calibration procedure are included in the back of the manual, and it's a fairly simple procedure. Now, the other advantage to having a calibration kit on site is that if you have any reason to suspect that the readings might not be correct, you can always slap some gas on it and check to see. I would suggest looking at what's called a demand regulator. That's usually the easiest and most economical way in terms of gas to do the calibrations. The last area I want to point out is one common mistake I see being made. Go to the diagnostics section, and this is particularly when you replace a oxygen sensor. Go to the diagnostics section, scroll down to oxygen sensor life, O2 sensor life, hit enter. You'll notice this sensor is good. If you hit the F3 button or reset, you'll see that the date code on the sensor that's in this instrument is 057. That means that it was manufactured in May of 2017. When you install a new sensor, it's absolutely critical that you go in and change this date code to match the date code that's on the side of the sensor. Otherwise, it's going to keep coming up with an O2 sensor error. One real easy way to tell is if you have an oxygen sensor error and you go to the main screen, the run hold screen, hit run. If it says 20.9% oxygen in the display, that means the sensor is working just fine. Likely it's the date code that hasn't been reset yet. So keep that in mind. So we now have the instrument up and running. You can see it says run in the top of the display. That's so if you're in a particularly noisy environment, you can still see that the pump is running. You can see it's set for natural gas, and this is the battery indicator. We've got full battery charge on it, or full batteries. The next thing to do is place the probe in the proper sample location. If you need additional information on that, go to our website, hbbpro.com, and scroll down to the bottom. There is a PDF file entitled Carbon Monoxide Combustion Testing Seminar Handout that shows where to test on the different types of equipment and some rules of thumb on what kind of readings are considered acceptable. Again, it's always a good idea to check with the manufacturer to verify what readings their equipment is designed and engineered to meet. Finally, and very importantly, remember to download Bacharach's reporting app. This is really, really amazing. I'll cover this in depth on another video. Definitely check it out. You bring up the test results that you want to document. You hit the run hold button to stop the pump. You press the scroll right button and a QR code appears in the display. You open up the Bacharach reporting app on your smartphone and click scan a new record. Hold your phone's camera over the display of the instrument. When it captures the QR code, your phone will ding and a PDF file of the test results will come up on your phone. From there you can email out the test results to your office, the customer, or wherever. Not only does it appear more professional, but it saves the cost of a thermal printer. Although there still may be some folks that want to print out of the test results. In any case, there's a lot you can do with that smartphone app. You can easily put your company name at the top of the PDF. You can even type in your customer's name. So hopefully this helps you use your Insight Plus. Stay tuned for more information and let us know if this is helpful. Thank you very much for watching.